Many people who listen into the podcast might aspire to be a CEO, but they probably don't necessarily think about being a co-CEO. What's the benefit of co-CEO?
It's like a marriage, right? You have to work at that relationship. People would come to us for the buildings, but they'd stay for the people. It took us a while to realize that, how important people were to the brand.
Now today we're joined by Charlie Green, co-founder of The Office Group, the pioneering flexible workspace company that redefined how London and beyond think about offices. What mistakes have you made that have helped you find your way?
So many mistakes every day.
What do you think you'd like your legacy to be as you reflect on all that you've achieved and yet still to achieve?
We did important work in...
Charlie reflects on the 20-year journey of building a business valued at over £1 billion.
You just hire amazing people below you who can hire amazing people below them.
How do you view the role of marketing in scaling an enterprise like The Office Group?
So,
it's a story of resilience, reinvention, and what the future of work truly looks like. Let's get right into it.
Well, Charlie, amazing to have you on the show. Thanks for giving up your time. Absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to jump straight in. After 20 years at the helm at The Office Group, in 2023, you decided to step out.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. How did you know that was the right time after such a long tenure?
I don't think, timing is a very strange thing. I don't think you ever know when is the right time or the wrong time to do something. I think you just have to feel your way in the moment. We had a wonderful adventure building the business, and 20 years is a good amount of time. And we grew the business it was quite significant. At that point, we had just really completed a merger with another business called Fora. So we'd gone on a journey with the Office Group, and we got it pre-merger to a good-sized business. We were good turnover, good strong margins, a profitable business, owned a lot of our assets, a valuation of probably just over $1 billion, 1.1 billion, which from a standing start was over 20 years. Something I think it's
pretty decent.
Not that we ever aimed for that as a number, but I think that was a good-sized business, and it was then the merger allowed us to have an even bigger platform to then take the company forward. And actually, we felt 20 years, Olly and I, Olly Olsen, who I started the business with, we were co-founders, co-CEOs. Everything we put in was equal, whether that was sort of emotional or financial, or effort or time, love, passion. It was quite unique, I think, when you have that sort of partnership, and we put it in together. And I think we got to the point where we were of a size it needed one voice, it needed one leader, and we had 3 CEOs because there were 2 of us, and we had another from Fora, the business we merged with. And actually, when you looked at the skill sets of the 3 of us, we felt that the CEO of that business was best placed to take us to the next stage and through the next chapter, but remaining as a shareholder of the business and being involved with the business and being there available to help shape and influence and be a resource as needed. So it felt like the right time. 20 years of very hard work, right? Because this is not something that came easily. So actually, it made sense. There wasn't a sense of relief. And there wasn't really a conscious taking a breath and relaxing. But I think subconsciously there was something that was saying, maybe you should just actually let somebody else have a go, be there, but try and take a step back.
Well, you didn't travel far, given the fact that we met in Fora.
That's true.
So clearly, you're still really actively involved in the enterprise. I mean, I find it fascinating, and you're obviously very humble, because there are so few people who could say that you did what you did, and that 1 billion plus valuation pre-Fora days, and to create the what is an empire in effect, and yet you didn't speak of it like that. And that's really resonant and really lovely that you have that thought.
Well, I think that's kind of you to say. When we did the deal with Blackstone, who invested in our business in 2017, and they are the largest investor in real estate in the world, full stop. And so that was, I think, for Ollie and me, a real recognition of what we had achieved in the growth of the business. So that's evidence as the enterprise value, that the price that was achieved. But actually, when we talking about $1 billion is obviously sounds great, but it's a valuation. It's not a figure that somebody has bought or traded. And of course, the business should be worth significantly more than that now, following the merger, and there's been growth. But so it sounds good, but it doesn't really mean very much, and in the sense that we haven't achieved anything at that level, other than sort of our own valuation and external valuations of the business. But I would say that Ollie and I didn't set this business up with a sense of we need to make an amount of money, or I want to have this personal wealth by a certain age or date. And we kept moving forward. We had a direction of travel, and we just kept moving in that direction. And you veer off the path and you come back and you go slightly different way. But it was never about targeting a number. We had to be profitable. That was a motivation, because otherwise you're not in business. So every time we added a building, and we had pre-merger 52 buildings. Today, a couple of years on from that merger, we're at 73 buildings, 3.3 million square feet in total. So, I think you can get distracted when you've got that eyes on the prize.
Of course.
So that was, again, an alignment that we had when we started the business, that we weren't distracted by that.
Love that at that juncture. Let's take a step back a minute, because I'd love to hear a bit more about the genesis of the business. And actually, it's so rare where you talked about you and Ollie and the relationship that you guys had at the beginning and all the way through. But tell us a little bit more about the office group, and love to hear a bit more about the origins and the concept behind it at that time.
Well, so both of us are London born and raised. I'm not sure that's relevant, but we knew each other. I met Ollie when I was on holiday in Thailand in 1992, and he was living there. He doesn't remember meeting me. He says he does, but he doesn't. And
what were you guys up to that he doesn't remember?
I mean, not for this podcast. Yeah. Well, it's a long time ago now, so I have no recollection either, other than meeting him. And we then ended up working at the same company. So I'm a chartered surveyor. I got a real estate degree. I worked in real estate. We both ended up working for the same company years later. And we were in different sides of the business, but we kind of connected. We'd just chat about life and football and stuff. And then I left that business because don't need to go into it at all, but I had heart surgery when I was 29. So I took 4 months out to recover. And when I came back, that was a quite a large PLC, that company. It doesn't exist anymore. And I realized when I went back there that I didn't want to work for a big company. So I left, set up on my own to do. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Right? So I rented a desk from a guy who would buy sites, get planning and sell them, and he just made a lot of money. So I thought, oh, well, that seems easy. And it wasn't. It's incredibly tough. And this was in the very early 2000s. And then I get a phone call from Ollie. I've told this story before, but I get a phone call from Ollie, and I'm renting a desk on the ground floor in Soho on Great Pulteney Street. And I see it's Ollie's number, and I'm sort of like, do I get it? Do I not get it? Yeah, I'll answer it. So I pick up the phone and I say, hi, how are you? Yeah. He said, look, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about business. So can we get together? I said, yeah, sure. When do you want to get together? He said, well, I'm outside your office looking at you right now. And I looked down the office to the street, and he's standing there on his phone. So, I mean, why he didn't just come in, I don't know. But thank goodness I didn't ghost him. And we go for lunch, and he said, look, I've got this idea, and I want to kind of set up this business and do this thing, but I need a property partner, and this is what it looks like. And I said, well, that's interesting, but what if it looked a bit more like that? And he said, yeah, that could work really. And we sort of had this meeting of minds. We never really talked about business. And, and again, I've said this quite often, that we didn't come away from that lunch with some euphoric joy over we're going to start a business together. And I had been consulting and trying to buy sites and failing. And so had a little bit of income advising people on what to do with their empty office buildings. And essentially I got to the stage where I thought, if I believe what I'm recommending, I should try and do it myself. That coincided with Olly's phone call, and we walked away from that lunch agreeing to start the business. And then we both had worked with a guy who'd started up a VC fund called Philip Newborough. The fund is still around and doing very well, called Bridges Ventures, and they funded us. And they were the ones who said to Olly, you need a real estate partner. And Olly said, what about me? And that all came together.
Today's program is brought to you by two fantastic organizations. First up is Studio Space, a leading on-demand marketing agency platform. Studio Space gives marketers complete control over their projects, from matching the right agency to your brief, to managing contracts and invoicing, and even tracking all of your spend data all in the one place. They take care of everything, and it's totally hassle-free. They even guarantee the work. So check out Studio Space today. Our second sponsor is the Marketing Skills Trust, a charity with a mission to make marketing a better place for everyone. They provide grants to help create a more equitable industry and support initiatives that really do drive diversity, inclusion, and create opportunity. The trust has been instrumental in leveling up the marketing skills across the board. And do take a look at their website for more information. Now, let's get on with the show.
So you started to build a business, you built a business. Many people who listen into the podcast might aspire to be a CEO, but they probably don't necessarily think about being a co-CEO. Quite a rare setup.
Yeah.
So obviously you knew each other well, but in principle, what was the benefit of co-CEO?
Yeah, it's not as rare as you think, because I get quite a few phone calls, and I think it's like a marriage, right? You have to work at that relationship, and it's there are highs and lows, but the love sees you through. I would say that Olly and I, we're very fortunate. We sort of our bond and friendship. We didn't start as friends. We knew each other and we were friendly, but we weren't close mates. But we became very close. And our principles and our values and everything were very much aligned, which allows that to happen. But we said at the beginning, if this is going to work as co-CEOs, then trust and communication were the two elements that we had to be absolutely on consistently and be authentic with each other in that way. And so trust and communication were really the pillars that allowed us to, I think, have that relationship. And then, of course, we had a complementary set of skills. Yeah. So Olly would capture it. He would say that I would make the business bigger and he would make the business better. So I was about finding the buildings. We'd both sort of have an element of design, but I'd lead the design and then I'd develop them. And then I would give him the keys and he'd fill them and run them. Of course, it was never as simplistic as that. And then you've got a Venn diagram with the bit in the middle that's quite chunky that you do together. But we had complete trust in one another's decision-making in each other's areas of the business. So we wouldn't, unless it was the stuff in the middle, like key hires or marketing or choosing logos or marketing strategy, we just allowed each other to make those decisions. And that freedom, I think, was very liberating so that we could be more agile and progress with a bit more pace without getting stuck in debating too much. But healthy debate is really healthy. So we had that too. We never actually really, I'm trying to think if we had an argument. We had strong differences of opinion. I don't think we ever lost it with each other. But then it's not
no fisticuffs.
It's not in either of our natures to really, to be like that.
It's quite interesting because I think as you say, the trust element was key, coming together in the Venn diagram. And you touched on the term marketing, and we have a lot of marketers who are listening to our podcast. And so from your vantage point, and you talked about you being the build person in the relationship, how did you and how do you view the role of marketing in scaling an enterprise like the Office Group?
So I think when I look at marketing, I think of brand, and I think of brand execution and brand positioning and market penetration. And then how do you capture all those things to win over and connect with your audience? And I think I think a lot of mistakes are made when there's too much emphasis on visual identity as brand execution, and we went deep and we didn't even know it. So I think we went deep on brand. In other words, the brand for us was about people and buildings. And I would say that the Office Group, we were originally called The Office because we had been to an agency and they'd come up with names like Liquid and Fluid and all sorts of things like that. And nothing really sat. And I was on the bus going home. And the Office TV show was on the side of the bus coming past me. And I looked at that and thought, well, in a world of lots of variations of the word office, you had easy offices, flexi offices, instant offices, many of them are still around. Let's be the Office. So that was our name. We were the Office, but we couldn't get the office.co.uk or .com.
Yep.
We could only get the Office Group. So we got the Office Group, but we had one building, we weren't really a group. But everything, our logo and everything that all of our collateral was the Office. And we just thought, if people make an association with a TV show, the TV show was at its absolute peak. We thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And so what? And it would stick in people's minds. So that was sort of coming out with the name of the Office, but the brand for us was about who we were as people and how we designed our buildings. And every building we designed individually, and we really cared about that design. So we took the building, we'd look at the architecture of the building, and that would inform how we designed it. Or we'd look at the area or the people who we thought would use that space. And so it became, yes, about us, but more about kind of them, the people who were going to be our customers. And it makes it hard, right? Because we were not an in-your-face brand. We wanted people to have ownership of the buildings. So we wanted them to feel like it was their office, even though they were letting space on short-term flexible terms.
Yes.
We wanted them to feel like it was theirs. And if they felt like they owned it, they'd stay longer. So that's a simple business premise. Give them value. And if they're happy, why would they move? Unless they outgrow us or go bust.
What I'm not hearing,
nothing
transactional per se, in the way you thought and conceived your marketing.
Yeah.
Not performance driven in the context of putting, cheesy adverts out there and trying to get more subscribers and short-term leads. Yeah. It was much more visionary. It was much more, what do we want this to be?
Yeah, it's harder, and we weren't marketeers, so we were going by feel rather than some kind of strategy that we
did a pretty good job
that we learned or somebody who'd advise us on. And it was Ollie and I, or myself, right? We had Karina, who was our first employee, and she was part of the brand too because she was an amazing human. And we were kind of everything. And as a small business, obviously you're bootstrapping and we had funding, but not a lot.
Yeah.
And our first building we bought, which was a pub in Islington that we converted, it had been converted to workshops. We converted it to offices. And we bought it for £910,000. We spent £240,000 on it. And, we were painting walls and then we were doing viewings and letting the space and doing the legals. And we were doing everything because we didn't want to pay someone else to do it, right? And I think that's part of our brand. So when people would come and so we put on the website, a lot of what drove the brand was two things. One, we want to be human, and two, we want to be different. We are not going to follow what others in the sector have done. We are trying to do something that works, take a business model that works and do it better. So we have to stand out from a crowd. And we had on the website, it cost us maybe $2,500 to build a website, and we had the software that allowed us to go in and make changes to the text, which we did kind of every other day or something, which I'm better than Ollie at writing. So I would do that. And we had on people, I think we had written something like Ollie, when talked about Ollie, it was the younger, because he, as he'll remind you when you talk to him, he likes to say it a lot, but he's the younger of the two of us. I said, so I wrote the younger, uglier half of the management duo. And I put something about my grey hair because I had grey. Well, it was starting to go grey then. And it was amazing how many people engaged with us and came to see the buildings because we wrote about ourselves, and we did it with a little bit of tongue in cheek, and it made us real and accessible.
So
and we didn't have big neon signs like WeWork. We figured they would come if we took that approach, because that felt true to ourselves, and then it would work. And that was our brand. And somehow you start to attract the people who work for you, have the same kind of values and the same feelings and beliefs as you, and the people who you attract mostly to rent your space also kind of share those too. And so for us, brand was whenever we had new starters, we as we grew, I mean, we every quarter we would meet 30 or 40 new hires, and Ollie and I would sit down with them. And one of the things I'd say is, people come to us for the buildings because the buildings are beautiful, and you have to, from a design point of view, you have to stand out, and people look at a website and go, oh, that actually looks really lovely. I'm curious to see that. People would come to us for the buildings, but they'd stay for the people. It took us a while to realize that, or it took me a while, I can't speak for Ollie, but it took me a while to realize how important people were to the brand. And then when the penny drops, because I was on the building side, so I was just focused on, I've got to create a beautiful building, and therefore people will come. And then when you realize that the people are really what your brand is, they're your most powerful marketing tool. And that's about good people who believe and are passionate about what they do because they believe in what we were trying to do. And we never set out to articulate, or we did eventually, but it took us years and years and years to really put pen to paper on our mission, purpose, values. And it was a really hard thing to articulate. But for the first 12, 14 years, whatever it was before we did that, people just got it. And if they got it, then we wanted them, regardless of what they were doing before.
It may have been instinctive, but it was on the money. The behavioral scientists would say you absolutely nailed the name because it's very authoritative, and the borrowed fame
does
of the
what
office.
It says on the tin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Descriptive, authoritative, and borrowed fame gives a mental shortcut in brain circuitry. And so it's fabulous to hear a founder and a CEO talk about how brand drove the whole thing and run so deep. But in terms of the need that you were meeting, back then, what you were doing wasn't really a sexy thing at all. What gave you the conviction that there was a business here?
It was really simple. We weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. There was an absolute clear demand. So the business that Ollie and I had worked at before provided flexible short-term offices. Yeah. But there was a lot of what we do is psychology. So the company we worked for before would say, okay, team, we've got a company to sign up for 9 months. Let's squeeze as much money as we can out of them because they're going to go after 9 months. And Ollie and I said, okay, team, we got somebody for 9 months. Let's do everything we can to make them stay. And I think so that allowed us to be better. We cared about it, and people felt that care. And I think that was really what set us apart. So we had complete confidence in what we were doing because demand was there, and the competitive supply was narrow and not particularly interesting. And really, when it comes back to it, I was 33 when we started the business. I'm giving my age away, but Ollie, what did we want? Where did we want to work, and what did we want to work in, what kind of space. And if we created that and we liked it and we wanted to be in there, then surely others would. That was
Charlie,
the essence of it.
you probably hate the analogy and probably sick to death of it, but clearly WeWork is sort of sitting in your space, if nothing else. I'm sure very different in how you guys operated and took the tone of the business and how it evolved. But it's interesting in the sense of, as you know, we've seen the evolutions, of course, with all the movies and the documentaries on the likes of WeWork, and they went for a bit of a tech play, if I'm not mistaken, in around how they valued their organization. And I wondered if there was sort of not similar thinking around it, but certainly how were you thinking about the scale to get to the point that you did, versus say how WeWork were thinking about it in terms of them being a tech company over a property or a real estate organization?
I've got so many stories.
I bet.
And we knew them well. And so got to know Adam Newman, who's the founder, really quite well. I met him first in 2011. Highly charismatic, very driven, but a complete tech bro, in the sense that, this is a guy who used a tech play for accelerated growth and market share capture. So that's your classic tech strategy, accelerated growth to capture market share. That's what he applied to a real estate model that is very difficult to execute, because the capital required and the exponential growth that you get with a tech play, once you have your software, then it's customer acquisition. And actually, I'm simplifying everything, of course, but with our business model and their business model, actually growth is quite cumbersome and takes time and is capital intensive. So I think they were extraordinary in how they grew so quickly, but they required, in order to fund that growth, big money.
Yeah,
which they got.
They did.
And Adam was the most extraordinary, probably still is, the most extraordinary salesperson. He's also a genius when it comes to marketing and brand. And what real estate as an industry does not know how to do is create a brand. And he has created something that globally, most businesses globally will know who WeWork are, for good or bad reasons. That notoriety is extraordinary.
Indeed.
And, a lot of that recognition was before the failed IPO. And then when you see the drama, the Jared Leto drama and the documentary, that then accelerates even further. But fair play, I think they transformed the industry. We benefited. Blackstone certainly had an awareness of this. Their awareness of the sector was greater because of WeWork, I'm certain. We're in 12 of their buildings globally as tenants. And I think a lot of people changed how they took office space based on an education from understanding what the WeWork model was, and we had a vicarious benefit from that. So there's we have a lot of gratitude. I mean, their behavior also at times impacted us in a negative way, which is very deliberate on their part, which is all part of the stories, but for which I think that was very poor behavior.
Were you nervous when you were seeing their downfall quite actively? Because clearly that then means a sector could be...
No, because I don't think it was a reflection of the sector or demand for office space or what people want from office space or changes in work behavior. I think so. Their IPO failed in September, I think, of 2019. So pre-COVID. And everybody around us say, oh my God, this is going to be disastrous for the sector. No, it's not at all. I think occupiers need office space.
Yeah.
And they want great quality and they want great service and they need flexibility and amenities. And we were doing all those things and we were doing them right. The WeWork demise, I think, had no impact on the sector in terms of demand for space. People were able to identify that this was something that was born out of hubris, over ambition, a disconnect between business model and growth strategy and capital needs. And they could see, and partly that played out because you had such a high profile individual who took the fall for it, but rightly, because he was driving the growth and put them in that position in the first place. So yeah, I was really relaxed. I'd be lying if there wasn't an element of Schadenfreude, but only because of how he behaved towards us. So the reality is there were a lot of people who were affected, who worked for WeWork, who had a very, they had a tough time.
Of course.
Personally, financially, emotionally. And so, yeah, we don't applaud that at all. And that's tremendously sad. But, it played out how it played out.
Yeah, we shouldn't forget. It's a good point. I was fascinated by when you talk about the brand is the people, and that you and Ollie would meet 30, 40 people every quarter to, I suppose, instill the culture. As it scaled, how do you maintain that culture? You can't go to every site every week. And did you have a mechanism, or was it all from that initial briefing? How did you make sure the culture endured?
Well, the obvious answer, which is the true answer, is that you just hire amazing people below you who can hire amazing people below them. And that, again, if there's an alignment, we were really trying to do something with the business. And in changing how people worked, I think that people understood that and got it. And I think just it comes down to good people. So we would also make that effort to make sure we were present. All right, we were working very hard, and we were available, and we were accessible, and we had an open door policy to our, Ollie and I shared an office, but it was kind of glass, and doors always open to the open plan office, and we were spending more time out the office in the open plan than we were in our office, and I think that was a really important piece. And we would go around the buildings as much as we could, and we'd have gatherings, but you can only have so many gatherings. So trying to stay present was really a challenge as we grew, but we looked after people really well. In the sense that when people had tough stuff as a small business, when you have that sort of family ethos, then you can be there for people. And I think we maintain that a lot because everybody has tough stuff. We all have challenges as we move through life. And I think we were good to people. And I think we tried to stay true to that. And the difficult decisions we made as quickly as we could. I think in the early days, we were terrible at getting rid of people, the wrong people. And we just, it doesn't come naturally to us to rip the plaster off. But good people. And I talk about skill sets and CVs, and actually we weren't really that bothered about where you went to university, what A-levels you got, what degree you had. We were more interested in you as a person.
So then if someone listening in here today, what would be some of the core attributes that you would look for in an individual that would make them stand out and make them desirable to an organization like yours?
That's quite a hard question to answer, because you often just get an energetic read on someone and they feel right. The number of times where we have hired people in the interview and just gone, fuck it, you'll be great here. Just come
That's
on
rare.
board.
Yeah.
I think that, but we, in terms of how you capture that, we wanted people who were energetic and bright and smart and could understand who we are and what we were doing and had ambition.
I'm reflecting as you're talking here. To the moment you met Ollie, phone call, picked up, one chair in an office as a consultant, to today. You must have changed dramatically. You can't be the same person 20 years later. None of us are. But I just think professionally, how have you managed to go through, because as the milestones grow and you scale, surely you need to evolve your skill sets too.
Well, it's hard, right? Because I didn't do a McKinsey management course on how to run and grow a business. And Ollie left school at 16 and was selling stuff out of his car, and he was a bailiff and chasing money. And that's how we didn't have an education that allowed us, but you make mistakes and you find your way. And
what mistakes have you made that that have helped you find your way?
so many mistakes every day, right? Every day there's something you send the wrong email to the wrong person, you hire the wrong person, you say no to a building you should have said yes to, you say yes to a client you should have said no to, right? It is, I mean, every day, the big mistakes are easy to identify. They are buildings that we should have done but didn't do. They are funding opportunities that we missed and should have pursued, and hiring people where we got it wrong and we should have taken them, or we got it wrong and now we have to deal with the consequences. And it's a litany. I think when people talk about failure, it's quite interesting because they seek the stories of big failure and what are the lessons learned from it. But actually, really, it's a daily process of staying focused, staying positive, and it's a resilience because you are making those mistakes every single day. And maybe it's as simple as not saying thank you to somebody when you should have. Those can have powerful consequences.
Wow.
It's quite liberating to think about, mistakes come in all shapes and sizes. And yeah, for sure there are some big ones, but it's very human what you've described. If I take a step back, if you walk around London now in the building, there's a crazy amount of building going on. And there's probably nobody with a better vantage point than you, that the rise of flexible working space, COVID, back into hybrid working and so on. So you've got that vantage point. So what's your perspective on the way that human beings are going to work in the future?
My view is that we should never go back to the way we were working before COVID, because I think that was not sustainable. Something almost had to break. The pace of London life, and I talk to London because we have buildings outside London, but that's mostly my experience because that's where I've worked most of my adult life. The pace here is tough, and the getting in super early and the leaving super late, and that sort of having to be at your desk, and the presenteeism and hard. And what the gift of COVID, I guess, is that the technology was adopted by everybody much sooner than it might otherwise have been, and that allows us to work in a different way. And working in a different way, I think ultimately how we're going to work in the future, notwithstanding AI advances and how that's going to impact us and job roles, and park that for a sec. But I do think that there is now a softening around the edges. I absolutely believe that we need to be present with one another, and that you have to gather and you have to come together to be the most effective as individuals and as a group and as a company. But the softening around the edges means that actually the pressure to be seen to be in for a certain number of hours at a certain time is less. Not gone, but is far, 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 far reduced, which means that we can go in a bit later and it's okay. We can go home a bit earlier and it's okay. And if we work from home on a Friday or every other Friday, that's okay. And maybe when we go home at 4:30, it's because we're going to jump on that call at 5:30, but we're going to do it remotely at home. Or I don't want to commute across town every single day, so I'm going to work and drop into a Fora for a day, and that's a plug. I haven't plugged the tool yet, sorry. But I'm going to do that for a day on this day every now and again, just to make my life a bit easier. And all of that is acceptable. So on the behavioral side, I think we'll see that shift where it's just, and we're kind of moving more towards there. We're still seeing stories of big corporates compelling their employees to come back to the office 5 days a week. But I think where we'll land is mostly, we'll be there 4 to 5 days a week, but on those days they'll
flex around it.
Yeah, it'll be more gentle. And I think there's an allowance again for sort of maybe work sometime at home or sometime in another office, that to lessen the burden of the commute. I think that's also important too.
On the note about shout outs, a big shout out to Reese, who I was introduced to many months ago, and he's doing a fantastic job at Fora.
He's an icon.
He really is. He's a wonderful, wonderful human, a very generous human, actually. And he heads up their partnership area at Fora. And I met him at a sort of, he does lots of partnerships with different communities. And one of them is the Scottish Business Network. And so we met at dinner where we had a great time at one of the locations not too far from here, in fact. But I'm in awe in terms of just the type of design elements that you have, certainly in the new building in King's Cross that I visited when we met. It was just incredible, the level of detail that's gone into it. And actually even different floors had different vibes and different faces and spaces to it. It was really, it was quite amazing. When I almost compare it to, dare I say it once again, the world of WeWorks, it's chalk and cheese. It's a totally different feel to the whole thing.
So I think from the first building, we understood how important the environment that you work in is to attracting people and keeping them. Not as important as the people, but we just had this innate understanding that we had to be authentic. And one of your routes to present being authentic is through what you build. And there are a number of people who will have a design book and it will be the same furniture and the same finishes and the same light fittings and the same color palette and the same partition systems, and that's easier and it's cheaper. And we felt that it was worth the extra effort and the extra cost to create something where people felt like this is unique. If I go to another Tog or Fora building, it's not going to be the same as
So
this.
right. So right.
And again, that reinforces this sense of ownership. It's theirs. And it's a lot more interesting as well from my point of view if I'm working on a project and I can really start from scratch and start the design again. So but it's harder. So we had different furniture in all the buildings. So we weren't even able to benefit from, if we ran out of a desk in that building, it's okay. We could get it from another building. We couldn't because they were different finishes, different sizes from different suppliers. We were just iterating with every building and trying different things. And it's quite strange. Even things that worked really, really well, we didn't repeat. So Ollie and I were doing a bit of a tour in the States of some of the big tech businesses, and we were in Google's offices, and they were showing us around, and they said, check this out. And we went to what was labeled on the door, janitor's cupboard, or just said janitor. And the guy gets his card and he sort of moves it around on the wall, and eventually the door clicks and the door opens and we walk into the speakeasy. And it was like, are you kidding me? This is amazing. So in Tintagel House, we got a cleaner's cupboard, and it's only available to the CEOs in the business. If they want to take someone in, they can. But so in each business who rents space from us, their CEO gets the card. It's a little bit elitist, but and they get access to this speakeasy room.
Wow.
It was a lot smaller than Google's, but it still has the same impact. You know, we went to in another building. I was in a car park in Copenhagen, and there's a tall car park. There's a stair going up the side of it, and on the bottom is a button. And you press the button, you run up to the top, and you press another button that gives you a digital display of your time. And we had another building that was 11 stories high, and we kind of copied that. And we never did it again, but we did it in one building. Yeah. So all these things we do in kind of, they just feel right for that building. We work with different architects all the time, and we work with architects that that are young and creative and original, and that's,
the principle of uniqueness.
It's exciting. It's really...
Sounds really good.
A little while ago, you mentioned having heart surgery at 29, and I can't walk past that. I feel compelled to ask, did that have significance? Has that shaped you? Has that evolved you? Is that part of your success? Maybe none of those, but I'm curious.
Probably all of those. So it's a life-changing... It was pretty serious. It wasn't an uncommon illness, but I had it very badly. So I had to have emergency surgery. And I had worked for this big corporate, and I went back there and I didn't like the environment that I was in. And that was partly because there was a CEO there who was quite toxic. And it allowed me to see that more clearly, taking that step out and coming back and then having a sort of a reevaluation of what was important to me.
Yeah.
And so I left and actually went traveling for a few months and came back and started the consultancy. So yeah, fundamentally, I was a corporate guy. I was in that business and I could see a path to being in the C-suite within 5, maybe 7 years, and I was prepared to work hard to get there. And then I wasn't.
Wow.
And yeah, it entirely shifted the path of my career.
Yeah.
So everything's a gift.
If ever there was
Even if you can't see it at the time.
I mean, how incredible in that sense of that pathway. The podcast, a lot of people who listen in are people sitting in corporate and have very powerful jobs, but actually often they do want to make that change and they can't. And for some, whatever reasons there may be. But it's a great example of, like you said, you had the aspiration of staying on that ladder, but yet imagine the level of success versus staying where you were per se. What a pivot moment. What a oof.
Yeah. Honestly, though, at the time, it felt like it was an easy call. I just, I'd had this experience and I wasn't giving up a lot. I was only okay money, but I was pretty junior. I was just ambitious and felt I had a path. Now, that was my view. I don't know if it was their view. So I didn't really have a lot to lose. When you don't have a lot to lose, it's really quite simple to make the leap.
Charlie, this has been fascinating, really, and a bit of a masterclass. And in the world of experience and differentiation and uniqueness and how you scale up, you've clearly gone on from being the co-CEO, as you described earlier, and you're now on to new things. So tell us a little bit about the new stuff that you're doing, what you feel passionate about today.
So it's been an interesting introspective journey and trying to understand what it is that I really have enjoyed doing over the last 20 years and what I really love. And, you can get fixated on the real estate piece because I think I'm really good at creating those kind of environments. And I understand real estate and I have this, I think, a good, strong sense of what works in space, what doesn't work in space, and how to create. And again, a lot of that comes from emotional intelligence. But then, as you go through this journey, you realize, well, I've also got actually, we've grown a business from nothing to something and had a lot of experiences along the way. We started it in 2003. In 2010, we bought out the original VC funders with a high net worth, Sir Lloyd Dorfman, who took a majority share and funded the business moving forward as we bought more buildings. And he was just brilliant for that 7-year period until Blackstone then came in. And so we've been through, and we traded through the GFC 2008, 2009. So we've had really tough stuff. We've had, we've raised money. We've had, we've exited funders, and we've had a bit of an exit part of our stuff along the way, and we exited Lloyd and brought in Blackstone, and so you deal with, and it's really interesting because dealing with a VC and then dealing with a high net worth and then dealing with the largest PE real estate business, you have to navigate each differently, and you have to adjust and adapt, and you've got to learn, right? So it's constant learning. But I think also perhaps the common or the commonality between the sort of building environments, building a business is emotional intelligence. I think Ollie and I have, we're fortunate to have that we can adjust and adapt to what's in front of us and who's in front of us and who's behind us and with us. And so you realize that actually it doesn't need to be limited to real estate, the next step. So I'm involved with a number of different businesses where I have a participation and advisory role, and that's good and that's interesting. But I think also there's a yearning to build something. So there were a couple of things that are bubbling away. which is probably a bit too early to share, but not to repeat TOG or Fora to go there again, because that chapter was amazing and that's done. And so it's about new, and it's about new learnings, and we'll see. And I suspect the future now will be this sort of participation in a number of different things, which gives me exposure to, which includes building a business in some way, because that is fulfilling, but so is guiding others and advising and a few NEDs. So it's good. It's exciting, and we'll see where we go. Some are cemented in, and others are bubbling away, as I say.
Well, watch the space.
Watch this space, indeed. Charlie, it's been an amazing conversation. Last question we come to, unfortunately, and it may be a slightly different perspective on the last question, which is ultimately, what do you think you'd like your legacy to be as you reflect on all that you've achieved and yet still to achieve?
Well, I think it's a little bit like we never chased an amount of money, whether that was personal or the business. In a way, I've sort of never really thought about what I want to leave behind. What's the legacy? But I guess, if you're going to force me for an answer, we did important work in making people think a lot harder about how you build and what you create in the real estate world, and giving the opportunity for those consumers of that space to work in a different way. And we were a strong voice in a big conversation, but I think we really played our part. And we haven't even touched on sustainability, but I think that was from the very early days we were building green roofs and rainwater harvesting and all of these things where it just dawned on us that it made a lot of sense for us to do that, because it was a commercial advantage. So you can be sustainable and be commercially more successful, which I think traditionally there's been a disconnect between the two, and we wanted to embrace that. We ended up building the black and white building in Shoreditch, which is London's tallest mass timber office building, and it's truly a mass timber office building. So the structure is timber, whereas a lot of timber buildings, the structure is steel and concrete. And that was, we're advocates for change, and I think love that to be a legacy, that we were advocates for change, and we impacted people, and we had fun along the way. Olly and I, we really enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, tough days, really difficult moments, heartaches, and feels like I'm about to burst into song. But with it, we had fun, and the people around us had fun. And I think that's important to remember, that you got to enjoy what you do.
So true. Charlie, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.